This morning, it is Father's Day, and happy Father's Day, guys, to all of you. Whether you have children or not, we know that you have mentored many people in your lifetime, and we appreciate that. Some of you here, I know that you've even lost children or grandchildren, and we know how painful that is, and we are sorry. We're sorry. But we thank you for being there for them before they passed, and what a difference you made in their lives. So mentoring is so important. What are some of the fatherly principles? Spoke a little bit about that earlier. Love, strength, courage, steadfastness, wisdom, patience, and a really great sense of humor. That goes a long way. I was lucky at home because my dad had a terrific sense of humor. He was always teasing someone or joking about something, and I really appreciate that. As a matter of fact, my husband does too, doesn't he, Sherry? He has a pretty good sense of humor, always telling a joke, and it makes it fun to live with someone like that. And you know, one of the things that I know in the children's lesson this morning, under the heading of steadfastness, there was wording that went along that also truthfulness goes along with that. And under steadfastness, what is so important for a dad or a mentor or someone that's going to be in a child's life or an adult's life is if being truthful, and if you say you're going to do something, do it. If you find that you jump out and volunteer too soon, and you really didn't mean it, you will typically forget when the time comes that because you didn't really, that wasn't your intention to begin with. You spoke too soon. But if you've misspoken at the soonest time, you go back to everybody concerned and say, you know what, I spoke too soon. I'm not able to do that. I'm sorry. They'll accept your apology, but don't stand somebody up. And I know too many children have had that experience where they have been stood up too many times by their parents. Too many times. A lot of reasons for that. So as we're talking about Father's Day today, I have to tell you that there are so many hard-working, dedicated, loyal parents out there that have just been a great example. But we understand, too, there are a lot of people that didn't have a father that was good to them. Their father wasn't a good example, and their father may have even mistreated them. So when it comes to celebrating Father's Day, they may not be first in line, okay? They may be the ones that need to sit back and be quiet and say, you know, I'm still trying to get over my childhood, and I'm going to one of these days. But, and even forgiveness, we hope that forgiveness can see the light of day at some point. If you had a father like that, or a mother, or someone else in your life that mistreated you, we pray for that. But most parents were just like mine. They tried to clothe and feed their children the best way they knew how. They didn't know what we know now about the human psyche, did they? And they said a lot of things and did a lot of things that they would have regretted if they had been a bit more conscious, but they weren't, and they were just trying to get through the day. They were trying to get their kids raised the best way they knew how. So most of us had parents like that, and we give thanks for them. When I think of the Unity organization, one of the men that comes to mind as one of the most fatherly to me is James Dillett Freeman, the poet and laureate and director of Silent Unity for many, many, many years. He was asked in 1942 to just create a version, and we read it today as the power for protection. But he had been asked out in the fields to give something besides the daily word that the men out in the trenches could take with them, some words that would be extremely powerful. Now remember, even then in 1942, daily word was known all over the world, and the request actually came from England. And so he sat down to write something, and he came up with something. He was going through the 23rd Psalm, which is great. I mean, there's no writing that's any better, is there? And he came up that was something kind of milk toast, and showed it to his one of his co-workers there. And she said, "Oh, come on, James, is that the best you can do? You know, those guys out there in the trenches, that's not going to be helpful. Give them something with power, has meaning. As few words as possible, something they can remember." So he came up with the power for protection. We say it every Sunday. The light of God surrounds me. The love of God enfolds me. The power of God protects me. And the presence of God watches over me. Wherever I am, God is. And all is well. So powerful, and I would advise you to take that with you, written in some way, every day. He went on a few years later, and his first wife was in the hospital and dying, it looked like, from cancer. And they had just spoken with the doctor after her surgery, and he had gone down the hallway to pray. And as he was praying, he was given these words, "I am there." He wrote that poem as well, and it is equally beautiful. And he said what he felt was that every moment from there on, through that time while his wife was in the hospital and thereafter, he would remember and he would feel God's presence in the room with him, in the hospital room, wherever they were. I am there. Later in 1989, he had a day or two to spare, and from taking care of his then wife, who's had Alzheimer's. So he asked a friend to take him out to see the redwood forests. How many of you have been to the redwood forests? Oh, aren't they beautiful? Oh, my goodness, life-changing if you've been there. Yeah, you have. He said, "I only want to see two things," he said to his friend, "the ocean and a first-growth redwood forest. That's what I want to see." His friend asked him, "Why first growth? What makes these trees so special, besides the fact that they had not been cut down in hundreds of years?" He said, "There's something special about those first growth trees. They possess a special kind of energy that I can feel. You know, you'll never see a redwood standing alone," he said. "It might fall over. Their roots grow so close to the surface that it takes several of them to intertwine their shallow roots and remain standing. Isn't that special? Sweet. Redwoods are like us, I suppose. They find their strength in community. Freeman was taking that rare break from giving daily care to his wife, Billy, who had been battling Alzheimer's for years. At this point, she could not speak clearly except for 3 words, and she would say, "I love you. I love you." She would repeat it to anyone that came into the room. And if you ask her to pray, she would immediately take your hands and break into a clear and spontaneous prayer that would make the most heartfelt sense. "I love you," she would say, while holding your hands. So this time in the Redwoods, it was a healing time for Freeman. He wanted to energize his soul that he could come back and bring comfort and strength to his precious Billy. Years later, the friend says that he had gone back with his teenage kids to the Big Basin to see another grove of trees a few miles away. The redwoods were amazing. He said in the park a sign read, "Father of the Forest." It stood in front of a 2,000-year-old tree. Absolutely amazing. Can you imagine? 2,000 years old. It's withstood every storm, every wind, and it's still standing. So it had roots that held it through every storm. We must grow roots like that. Many of us don't have family roots to count on. We must grow our own roots, mustn't we? And I think many times we decide to anyway. We decide that the roots that we had aren't sufficient for us. We must reach out and do more. This prayer, the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us. This prayer of protection went with Buzz Aldrin to the moon. I want you, if you would, to memorize this and take it with you every place you go and remember that. I was talking with Miss Nay earlier in the week, and we were talking about how to remind these children from the neighborhood that they can be strong, they can be a stand-up kind of person on their own, they have the strength within. And this prayer for protection came to me, and I said, we just need to print that out and give it to them and remind them of that every single Sunday. Is that they have enough. Their roots are strong enough. They need to stand up on the inside. There was a little boy that went to the fair with his dad, and he saw one of those inflatable clowns. It had a sign that read, "Try to knock me down." Have you ever seen one of those? You know what I'm talking about. He hit it, he slapped it, he pushed it, he struck it again and again, and the harder he hit, the quicker it seemed to bounce back up. Now, no matter how hard he tried, it just would not stay down. His father watched. The boy punched the clown until he finally interrupted and asked, "How's it possible for the clown to keep standing back up no matter how hard you hit it?" Well, the child scratched his head and he said, "Dad, I think the clown is standing up on the inside." So that could have been my whole message today. We just need to stand up on the inside, don't we? Each and every one of us has the ability to stand up on the inside. We know that. We know they're great feats of strength. And sometimes it's not just the man either. They're women. We've heard of this. You've read about in a magazine or somewhere, or possibly I've told you, about women that are, a woman that had had surgery sitting on the front porch and watching her son repair an automobile, and all of a sudden it falls off the jack. And how in the world was she able to get down off the porch after having surgery, get down to the car, not only that, but lift the car up off the son to keep him from being crushed? We've heard of those stories, those miracle stories, over and over and over again, and we know they happen. And the truth is, we're all standing up on the inside. We all have a power that protects us, a presence that watches over us, and a love that enfolds us all the time. Even if we didn't have the greatest parents in the world, I hope that we've learned to grow our own roots, and we've learned ourselves to stand up on the inside and take care of ourselves and understand that we have a good and a power within, always and in all ways. So when life knocks us down, seems impossible to get back up, when life demands more from us than we're able to give, then more than ever, we need to find a way to do what needs to be done. It's just at those times that we come face to face with a reserve of strength that's always been there. Always. We're stronger than we think. And we can always also be that mentor for others. There's a coach called Coach Roz, Greg Rosler. He's the founder, executive director of Sacramento-based Playmakers Mentoring Foundation. He says when he first started coaching high school football in one of Sacramento's roughest areas, he just didn't know that some of the kids had no place to live. They didn't know where their next meal was coming from. Many had never known their father. They all wanted to play football, even though their school hadn't won a game in 3 years. They wanted to play anyway. Coach Ross said it was a big assignment. He wanted to help have a male role in their lives who truly cared about them. He wanted to be a model. The football team became family for them, and they found a sense of belonging and safety. But many of the boys were failing in their classes, so he started an early morning tutoring program. He said initially they were just helping them catch up in their classes, but then he found out that one of the reasons they were failing is that they couldn't read. So he switched the focus to reading and getting them caught up in the foundational pieces necessary for them to pass their subjects. He wanted to provide ongoing support and encouragement for these kids. They'd been given a tough start in life, hadn't they? Real tough start. I think about that sometimes. You'll think about many of us grew up in families. We weren't affluent for sure, but we had enough to eat. We had clothes. Many of the children don't. They don't have food. How can you even think about reading and writing in school when you're hungry and you don't have proper clothing? It's hard. It's hard for these children. So he made a huge difference. He wanted to provide ongoing support and encouragement for these kids. So that's where this mentoring association was born. They promote character and leadership to those disadvantaged kids and at-risk kids. So for many, I know that our role in life doesn't always include being around children, nor should it. We're not all meant to do the same thing. As I said earlier, remember, I'm not saying that we're all supposed to go out there and start a mentoring program, but I would ask you to pray for those that are. I would ask you to be mindful of that, and that the next generations will only be as good as the encouragement that they receive from home and from those that care enough about them to encourage them and tell them that they can do more. They can be the same as the one who came from maybe an affluent family. You may have to struggle a little bit more, but if we can encourage kids to go out and get an education, finish high school, there are a lot of respectable jobs out there, and then to go on to college. There are scholarships. I know my husband had a friend that he worked with in the, he had a degree, he said, with the dinosaurs in computer science, and that was about the truth. When he got back from Vietnam, he went back to college and got a degree in computer science and mathematics. But at that time, the computers would fill this room, you know. But then throughout his career, he stayed up with the technology, and they were connecting data centers all over the world. We lived in Oak Ridge, Tennessee at that time, and a man that worked with him, he was one of the, oh my goodness, he was eccentric and one of the most intelligent people you'll ever know. But I remember I was so surprised when I found out about his background. He had come from a hardscrabble farm in Texas, got absolutely zero assistance from his family. They didn't even encourage him to go to college. Of course they didn't. They didn't know it was possible for someone like him to go to college. So he got a scholarship, worked his way, had just enough money. He said he had to graduate in 3 years because that was all the money he was going to be able to work for, and he did. Interesting, huh? So it doesn't matter. You may have had a really hard background, but we can all encourage ourselves to move on. Now here's what I want to finish with, and this is really what I was getting to today, and it's the most important thing I want you to go away from here remembering, okay? If you don't remember anything else I said, I want you to remember this. We're born into this world looking like our parents, but we die looking like our choices. What does that mean? It means a lot of us have blamed our insecurities, our illnesses, our everything else in the world on our genetics, our upbringing, our everything else. We make choices every moment of every day. And if you're blaming your life on someone else, I hope you'll give that up. I hope you'll forgive. I hope you'll know they were doing the best they could, whoever they were, even if it was someone that was very unkind. The reason they were that way is because they did not know that they had an inner light and they could be more. But I hope you do. The 5 unity principles we teach right here every Sunday, we teach one aspect of it, is that there is a power out there. You have that power too, right within you. You can connect with it just as simply as closing your eyes, going into the silence, as Dennis sang this morning, into the silence, connect. You can feel it. You can, just as Mr. Freeman said he could feel the energy from the trees. You can feel the energy. You can feel the light. It'll move right down through you to your heart. It'll illuminate your heart. And you will find that you are a light. Visualize yourself walking around lit up just like a light bulb. Can you visualize that? You are. You're a stand-up kind of person. Because you're standing up on the inside, you have God's light within you. And you do that by reminding yourself in the silence. You spend enough time in prayer, going within, meditating, and you strengthen those spiritual muscles by walking the talk. Walk the talk and do everything I said this morning, male, female, whatever you are. You have a strength within you. You have a power. You have a light. Jesus said so. He said, you're the light of the world. What I do, you can do. He said it, but we've chosen not to believe it. I hope you'll take my word for it. And I hope that when you die, your choices look wonderful on you. Thank you for your time.